Yes, just want to say greetings to you in the best of salutation. I just want to take the time to share what's not so much really. I won't want to mislead anyone to saying that which is on my heart. Uh, my heart is has a certain dis-ease about it, and I am trying to recover from that dis-ease. Um, when I mean my heart, I mean the center of my intellect. I mean the balance. There is not as uh, balanced. My intellect is not as balanced as it needs to be. Uh, but yes, I do want to talk about some terms as it is applied to feelings of inadequacy, feelings of inadequacy. As you see, there is a picture there is to uplift the youth. I realize that the youth, the adult is being hunted by their youth, their past early childhood, and the youth is being hunted by the adult, which means the youth has to not have to, but maybe are acting as an adult before it is time for them. Where there is growth, there is development. It is about developing the growth to complete maturity, let's say, to completion. So we must uplift the youth. One of the challenging things is I realize having to do with appropriate behavior. Appropriate behavior. That's necessary and vital and important. Appropriate behavior. So going back to finding, the essence of who you are. Yes, there was the terms that which I will be dealing with will be one of that happens to deal with one of the 5 learning disability, and that will be feelings of inadequacy. Say a little thing about Common Humanity Mission first. A nonprofit organization that labor in the field. We are a social life skills development agency that labors in the field of life transition or transitional endeavors, addressing social ills and various types of setbacks, such as social learning disability, incarceration, addiction, homelessness, immaturity, and abandonment. We are also facilitators of mature social discourse, promoters of self-worth, and educators of effective communication. We are reconnecting the disconnected, common mentor benevolent community while simultaneously promoting the maturation process. Where there is connection, where there is no connection, there is no growth. And if I will give a mission statement, it would be that we promoting once again the value of self-worth by cultivating the potential of knowledge that is in us all. Doing so, communicating a clearer image to the world with 5 channels of communication: understanding, tolerance, temperance, confidence, and respect. Social intervention is needed. Yes. Let's deal with these 5 learning disabilities. I'm gonna deal with one, and that is feelings of inadequacy. Feelings of inadequacy. Let's see how that is defined. Okay. Feelings of inadequacy. A feeling of not, being good enough. One's inability to deal with life. Self-doubt. Lack of self-worth. And when you have done the best you could, life experiencing constantly beating you down, you ask yourself, am I good enough? Yes. I want to try to approach this feelings of inadequacy. I want to try to approach it progressively. And because we need to learn to reason from the premise of conversation and reason with progression rather than regression. And this is how I will approach this. In doing so, I will administer the progression. And when it is properly administrated, the end result is to restore social credibility. Yes. So this progressive approach also applies to having an understanding, and out of understanding comes consciousness. You become aware. A child comes out, his or her mama becomes aware of his or her surroundings. I like to say that I try to operate as a social health engineer, Yes. To counter what has been socially constructed or engineered against people, and create these feelings of inadequacy, self-doubt, and lack of self-worth. It is said that the term recidivism, repeat offenders in the judicial system. The word offenders happens to do associated with the word of being easily offended. You know, it's like a trigger in a trap, a trigger in a trap. And something that causes entrapment, like you're trying to trap an animal. And it's done so in a hostile manner. And you entrap someone. It also could imply an injury, because you can ambush someone. You're lurking in the bush just to ambush someone. You could ambush one's conduct. He or she could be in religious sense, in a prayer, you ambush or interrupt them, that cause injury because it is deemed to be inappropriate. In fact, it produces certain behavior that leads to that can ruin a person, that could destroy a person. Appropriate behavior, appropriate conduct, shame, doubt, and even in the psychology field, it could be associated with borderline personal disorder. Borderline personal disorder is a mental disorder characterized by instability in mood, vacillating up and down behavior and function. And I realized that when that comes into play, we also have to deal with a term, forgot who said this, but a brother sent me something about shame and guilt. One is the guilt is the action, and the shame has to do with feelings of abandonment as well. And then the automatic distorted thought kick in, and you blame others. You get into the blaming game, and when you get into the blaming game, you don't want to take the responsibility for the consequences of your actions. So we used the word earlier, recidivism, which is moral cultural decline, which is the lack of accountability. That means that one's accountability has been weakened as opposed to strengthened. So when we talk about appropriate behavior, appropriate conduct, it is to strike a balance, a testament. That's what that means, is to strike a balance. But this blaming, you focus on the other person as the source of your negative feelings, and you refuse to take responsibility for changing yourself. She's to blame for the way I feel. My parents caused all my problems. I know I have felt um, similar sentiments, and it is a process of dealing, accepting it, or acknowledging it, and processing it. It is a attitude in it, and it's a behavior. And, and when it's an attitude, it could be associated with being prejudiced, and that could associate with shame, and it could lead to guilt. And it becomes a behavior. Yep. So it negative filtering is another distorted thought. And in the negative filtering, one focus exclusively on the negatives and seldom notice the positive. You know, look at all the people who don't like me. Example. And I'm once again trying to approach what I'm sharing when it deals with one of the 5 learning disabilities, feelings of inadequacy. I'm approaching it progressively, very progressive, because it is aggressively attacking our mental, emotional, yes, and physical well-being. Yeah. And you don't want to get to a point in your life where you have another extorted thought, whereas we deal with regret orientation, where it says you focus on the idea that you could have done better in the past rather on what you can do better now. I could have had a better job if I had tried, or I should have said that. You can do better now, um, rather on what you can do better now. So it's also a matter of being better rather than bitter, and not being better at being bitter. Yes. So appropriate behavior, appropriate conduct, and interaction, one with another. When it comes to terms such as shame, guilt, uh, borderline personality disorder, uh, being responsible. And I say this to say that if in the environment in which we live, um, in the illness and the sickness, because people are only responding due to the extent of the damage and the injury that has been done to his or her humanity. And some may come do things inappropriately, and maybe conduct or dress inappropriately, or use, express themselves in an inappropriate manner. And if one doesn't have any accountability, one has strengthened their resolve and their restraint, and has no discipline, then one inappropriate behavior and conduct could lead to another. Because the greatest distance between us all is a misunderstanding. I just hope that we don't become so arrogant and not understanding and taking any consideration of the time in which we're living, in the era or in the environment that we think is appropriately to be inappropriate. We become so desensitized because the normal becomes the abnormal becomes the normal. And people will define, say, what is normal and abnormal. I would say anything that is contrary to the natural evolving process. For example, and that means you have to take responsibility for your actions. We bypass a lot of things. One brother would call it a spiritual bypass. Hard to, when you have done the best you could in life experience of constantly beating you down, you ask yourself the question, am I good enough? And yes, you are. It's like when we do a thing and we say, well, leave it in the hands of, we'll call him the man upstairs. Because if there is a stairway, that goes up, something must come down. And that's just the law of gravity. One songwriter said, what goes up must come down. Relativity. So, but yeah, they say, well, leave it in the hands of the man upstairs. I said, well, or one must be clear that that we have to take responsibility. That's very irresponsible. And that's one I associated with. Don't mean it's the brother meaning it. That's a spiritual bypass. To circumvent the consequences of being irresponsible with the consequences of the action. What have we been irresponsible with? The misuse of our limbs and our faculties. And I'm not saying we as an all exclusive club of people, a group of people. Just use the term we. I try to be a model of self-improvement, working on trying to be the best model of self-improvement. And so, but no, we can't. I mean, not saying we can't. What it's, for me, that's another form of spiritual bypassing or circumventing and refusing to accept responsibility of the consequence of one's actions, and therefore it leads to one to becoming very hypocritical. There's a lot of illnesses that we are living with that are overlooked, neglected, and really undetected. Yes, as society has come out of what is coming out of a pandemic, as they call it, and the word itself, I like to deal with this linguistically because I'm still attacking this 5 learning disability feeling of inadequacy, to shame, guilt, borderline personality or borderline disorder or borderline personality disorder. You have to be in administering the dosage, you have to be very progressive, because it's attacking very aggressively borderline personality disorder, this mood instability in you. But yes, that also leads to a status, one who takes pleasure in inflicting injury and harm on people. Because when I think of this society, this world, it is the pleasure here, but there's responsibility that comes with the pleasure. Because I always make my case that we're suffering from, and I say we, it's not that it's all exclusive, just use the term, because the best project that one can work on is him or herself. Conclude is a social disorder learning disability. Yes, because the best body of knowledge is creation. And creation this is a testing ground test. And then we learn the lesson. I think there was an artist that did a song. He was trying to find what he was, and he was saying, maybe it's our learning ground. But his skill and his potential were being, taken in the wrong direction. Therefore, life was taken from him prematurely. Yes. And actually, Dr. Harding was called that the residuals of psychological slavery, or it is associated too with psychosocial dislocation, where you can't, and that's deal with also a lot of resentment and regret, orientation and blaming, because you can't go back, there. You have to move forward. So as we once again come out this what we call this pandemic, the word itself, we're associated with a Greek term. It's a pan, and a demos, people or population. Pandemic, people, all people. But when the film industry, they pan in on what they want your eye to focus on, and they use music and sound in the horror movies to get your emotions stirred up, you vacillate. That's really not all that healthy. Some would say it's not healthy at all. And just the effects, the entertainment industry is not just for entertainment purpose. It reflects he wants you to think and look at the politics of what's going on in the society, in the world, but it's not reality. It's a reality that has been given, but it comes out of the mind of the people who are putting this out. And I look at some of the stuff and I read, I'm like, say, how far can they go with silly stuff? Everybody wants to be a superhero. I mean, that's what you mean. You elaborately construct something. Hero comes from the meter, the word or root. But you can make anyone your hero. It does not, no one cares about his or her character as long as he or she is celebrated. So, but yeah, and people pan in on it. They focus their attention. And the word demos is also associated with the word democracy, and demos associated. It could be a duplication in the Latin sense, demos, but it also represents the word demon. But the infection of the pandemic affects the results of one's, because truth is the call that affects one's reality. Yes. By contrasting views as well as our perspectives, the infection of the disease strikes and affects people differently, spiritually, socially, morally, ethically, and linguistically. Yes. Then we look at the word or EPI means that which is upon us, is visited upon us. So a people, and EN means a endemic, a visitor, a person visiting, or a place, something that has been visited upon us. So how would you welcome or entertain or host a unwelcome visitor? Or how would you entertain a welcome or something that you welcome? Did you invite it? Did you give it an invitation? No, because the visitor that has been visited upon the people is a disease of the heart. It affects the mind, body, the soul, as well as spirit or the energy of the individual and of the people. But yet we must continue to march forward, breaking down barriers toward healing, knowing that the aim is to strengthen our accountability. Do we have any shame? What should we have shame about? Have we abandoned our responsibility one for another, for yourself, for your family, for your community, for your nation? And I'm not talking about with smoke and mirrors. So no, there's two sides to the coin. I'm not talking about being manipulative and using your influence for people to focus on one thing that people who control the means of productivity benefit from. We must keep good company one with another. The company that you keep strongly can influence your decisions. We need good companions will remind you to encourage yourself and do good, still dealing with overcoming social learning disabilities, the feelings of inadequacy, as I come to the understanding to administer progressively, approach this thing progressively and the understanding of what I am administering. And there is a end result, and the end result is to restore social credibility. Social credibility. So we overcome narcissism, work on overcoming borderline personality disorder, the shame, the guilt, frustration, the anxiety, the depression, the demeaning, degrading, disrespect, and demoralizing thoughts that puts us in a position to dehumanize each other. But before all that must take place, you must first become desensitized. Failure to use what is required upon us, that is our intelligence, faculties, be able to reason with progression from the premise of conversation. There is a term in the medical field called talk therapy, because our inner conversations that we're having with ourselves create our circumstances. There's one more automatic, distorted thought that I would like to share. When it comes to what is psychotherapy, as I said earlier, cognitive behavior, emotional distress, dialectical behavior, emotional distress, interpersonal behavior, emotional distress, family behavior, emotional distress, individual behavior, emotional distress is this distorted, automatic distorted thought, is the inability to disconfirm, which means one reject any evidence or argument that might contradict your negative thoughts. May we learn to overcome feelings of inadequacy and continue to uplift our youth, or the innocence that's in us all. May we continue to not just grow up. May we continue to be mature. Until next time, talk to you.